Joining us now, former federal prosecutor Don Brown. Don, thanks for being here.
My pleasure, Alicia.
So SPLC calls these charges false, right? Saying its work was to help save lives and it was known to federal authorities. What would prosecutors need to prove to win this case?
Well, first off, the SPLC, the whole notion Southern Poverty Law Center is kind of an oxymoron. There's no poverty about it. They got over $100 million in an endowment. And in this case, the indictment, if you read it, alleges that over a 10-year period from 2014 to 2023, during the entire time of President Trump's campaign and first and second terms, really, that the SPLC moved more than $3 million to various violent extremist groups such as the Ku Klux Klan, the Aryan Nation, and even the Socialist Party of America. And in one instance, there's an allegation that it sent $270,000 to an informant who on the inside helped to orchestrate Charlottesville. So they claim to the public that they are set up to take your money to end the Ku Klux Klan, but the evidence is showing that they in fact were perpetuating these racist groups so that they could race bait to raise money off their race baiting. And that's what the government's going to have to show. But a grand jury in Birmingham, Alabama has already seen enough evidence to bring about an indictment. And that's the organization has been indicted, Alicia, but you can look for indictments against some of the leadership as well, I believe, coming up pretty soon.
Okay, what do you say to those who say you can convince a grand jury to indict a ham sandwich?
That's right. That's right, but sometimes grand juries don't indict. But when you look at the indictment itself, the indictment appears to be airtight on its surface. And that's true. You got a good point there. The standard is lower for bringing an indictment, but the Justice Department in this case appears to have paper trails going to these groups that were involved in actually inciting some of this violence on the inside. So we'll just have to see how it plays out when it gets to a jury.
And the SPLC says it was about infiltrating extremist groups. But, you know, where's the line between legitimate intelligence and fraud?
Well, if you think about it, the SPLC is supposed to be a charitable organization. And when you look at Section 501c3 of the Internal Revenue Code, they're supposed to support groups for religious purposes, educational, literary, science, sometimes to help amateur sports or to save animals from cruelty. None of this was happening. And so that's what's happening. Elon Musk, during the beginning of the DOJ, said a lot of these organizations start out with altruistic purposes. These NGOs, Save the Whales, Save the Penguins, but they funnel money to leftist organizations, to push leftist groups. I'm very happy to see the DOJ stepping up here with this indictment.
Yeah, Jim Jordan is demanding testimony from the group's leadership. Do they face a risk if they do testify?
Yeah, of course they do. My guess is that they will not testify, or if they show up, they'll plead the fifth. Mm-hmm. As I said earlier, this is the tip of the iceberg. Mm-hmm. And usually when you have a criminal organization indicted, or an organization that DOJ alleges is a criminal organization, you can't put the SPLC in jail. But that normally leads to individual indictments, perhaps of leadership of the SPLC. We don't know exactly who, but you can look for leadership indictments possibly to follow this. And my guess is that Congressman Jordan, as much as he'd love to have those folks testify, they're going to probably assert the fifth and not give them anything.
This could lead to changes for nonprofits and compliance standards.
Well, we've got a nearly $40 trillion national debt, just hit $39 trillion. The federal government, Alicia, gives money to these organizations. And these organizations can raise money. They're nonprofits. They can trade stocks. They can make all the money they want. They got to give away a little bit every year. But it is really kind of a scam in many, many ways. I'm not saying that all of them are that way. There are good nonprofits, but really the system has been abused. Why in the world are Bill and Melinda Gates into pushing vaccines or population control or whatever they're pushing? You know, they just go off into left field. And a lot of cases, our money goes to these organizations that then push leftist causes. And I think it's time to take a real hard look at these.
Yeah, agreed. Former federal prosecutor Don Brown, thank you for being here. Appreciate your insight.
My pleasure. Thank you, Alicia.
You got it.